The UK's recent £1.9 million investment in the Sankore project signals a strategic move to strengthen its economic and diplomatic ties with Nigeria. Amidst a global landscape where China and the US have been vying for influence in West Africa, the UK's funding initiative could be seen as an effort to reaffirm its political and economic foothold in the region. I discussed this and more with Mazi Godson-Azu, the CEO of Cater and Merger Consult. Mazi Godson-Azu, it's always a pleasure having you in the channel's Business Global studio, particularly to talk about UK-Nigeria relations. Of course, we're all surprised when we saw the pictures of the president with King Charles III in Buckingham Palace last week. Of course, he was also there with the British ambassador to Nigeria. And this came just before there was an announcement by the UK government that Britain is to commit £1.9 million to the Sankore project, which I believe is to do with technology and ICT, not just for Nigeria, but also for Ghana. Is this too little, too late? How do you kind of put this announcement in the broader context of UK-Nigeria, UK-Africa relations?
Thank you very much, Juliana. It's my great pleasure being with you again, once again this morning. I think it's a little drop in the ocean. Based on the fact that there's a lot has been going on between Nigeria and the UK, and UK and Africa.
For years.
For the last 60 years now, in terms of recent diplomatic and democratic relationship between most African British colonial nations to the UK. 1.9 million is a drop in the ocean. And understanding the fact, I know the president visited the king, which is normal, but I look forward to the president visiting the prime minister.
Absolutely.
And because the king is a political head in terms of the fact that he takes decisions, agrees on decision as reached by the parliament,
yes, of course.
and sign off as the president, ceremonial president. But the real active person in government is the prime minister. And so I look forward when the prime minister itself will engage with President Tinubu on economic importance of our relationship in terms of how we move forward from our diplomatic relationship to an economic relationship which benefits both countries on an equal par. Because at the moment, the British, the UK government is having a head in terms of trade relation between Nigeria or even any of the African countries. And so I hope and I look forward to when Mr. President would formally appoint an ambassador or a high commissioner designate.
Now, hasn't it?
It's really not very fair if we have a designated British ambassador to Nigeria, and for the last 1 year plus, we still have an ambassador. And it looks it's a slight on us because then who introduces the president to the king? Who introduces the president to the prime minister? It looks like a very short-lived diplomatic relationship. But then, looking at the 1.5 million is very important because you look at the trade relationship between Nigeria and the UK. One of the greatest exports of the UK to Nigeria is service-oriented export volumes in terms of financial services, consultancy jobs, and IT-related and banking services, which I believe that if the money is utilized properly in Nigeria, we can develop equal potential experts who reverse case. Because at the moment, the only services that we are exporting to the UK is students. And if you put the value of the export value of Nigerian student exported to the UK, which gives more value to the UK government rather than to the Nigerian government, Nigerians will begin to look at how to the government need to sit down and look at how do we rebuild our diplomacy in terms of service-oriented export. How do we get those students that are coming here to get them to be engaged by multinational organizations, corporations, and salaries paid to them, some amount of that salary goes home to Nigeria, remitted home in a very coordinated manner, because every British expat that works in Nigeria receives his money in pounds or in dollars, which means that most of their money comes back home and the tax are related to the UK. Obviously, the company tax and everything goes to Nigeria, but Nigeria needs to also begin to look the reverse case in terms of funding, international related funding to build and to produce more digital experts, IT experts or technological experts from Nigeria that will in turn become an economic benefit to Nigeria and the country that is giving that help.
Yeah, you've raised some really interesting points there. You've opened a can of worms, I must say. Although I do know that the Minister for Trade and Industry, Dr. Doris, as well as the Minister of the Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, they have been to the UK several times. But we want those conversations to bear fruit, don't we? If I can, please let's expand on relations between Sir Keir Starmer, Labour leader, Prime Minister, and Nigeria. We just came back from Beijing. Again, lots of pleasures. It appears as if, we've solidified that all-important relationship with Xi Jinping. How does Britain fit into that? Because, of course, there are so many diaspora groups, really credible groups, such as Cater and Merger. I know you've got your London Political Summit and Awards coming up. Does Britain still have that clout? Does Britain still have that edge? Or are they falling victim to, we don't want to deal with the colonial masters anymore? Because we've seen that with France, haven't we? In some countries where they're just like, we just don't want to deal with you. Is there a fear that we could be heading that way, or that this particular administration is not really interested in doing much business with Britain? They want to go to China where, the shackles are freer?
Yeah, I think looking at the body language of Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, and the Labour government, there's importance to understand that the new Labour government is going to be a multilateral kind of foreign policy government, and they'll be looking at engaging as many countries that have similar familiarity.
The focus has been very much on Europe at the moment.
Yeah, the focus is much in Europe at the moment, but then I see a kind of a shift to Commonwealth nations, to Africa, as they make progress with trying to reshape their relationship with Europe in terms of post-Brexit, not to actually make a similar mistake as the Conservatives have done, trying to alienate the European network. But then they want to keep a good relationship while they still maintain Brexit, because I know Keir Starmer was a Remainer, and but he has a multilateral way of approaching things. So I believe that he has a very huge interest in Africa, what is happening in Africa, and I believe that as time goes by, he will be able to roll out some of his important policies and engagement with most African countries, especially Nigeria, of whom Britain has a very huge trading relationship, a huge diplomatic relationship, a huge political relationship, because we practice so many of the things they do back home in Nigeria. And so I think there's going to be an opportunity where the Labour government, which is more pro-liberal economy and open market approach, because Starmer is one of Tony Blair's students who believes that Labour should move away from its far left to the center of governance, and so a center-left government will look at pro-market, and will look at the opportunities that is driven by the market, and also considering the people, the need of the people, and the fulfillment of the social needs of the people. So I believe with that he will be able to structure, because the present-day Tinubu government is likened to what Keir Starmer is trying to develop with the new Labour.
Interesting.
Tinubu's government should be looking at a socialist agenda, because Tinubu himself is a socialist, in my own thinking. And being someone who is driven by the economy, he should begin to look for economists and look for experts in the ideological framework of a liberal economy, the third way agenda, whereby they begin to look on how they can keep the masses economically well-being, but at the same time allowing the market to determine the way forward in what happens in the society, rather than the government determining the price.
Very fascinating points. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but I do want to pick your brains on this all-important matter before I let you go. Got to talk about what's happening back home in terms of the economy. Yes, of course, we know that they told us the reform measures were going to be painful. There has been some data suggesting that perhaps it's paying off. We have the oversubscription of the domestic bond. Inflation is finally falling, albeit slightly. GDP is expanding, but it does affect us in the diaspora because, of course, we know the money we send home is almost like a welfare system. What are your thoughts on this, very briefly, in terms of where the administration is going? Are they going in the right place? It affects all Nigerians, whether you're at home or abroad, doesn't it?
I mean, thank you for that question. I mean, from us here, as we try to organize the London Political Summit this year, one of the key aspects of it is talking about the importance of democracy and in the economy of any nation. And it's important for us to understand that there is no economy without politics, and there's no politics without economy. Anyone that thinks that economy is driven because of people's agenda is missing, because most economy are driven by political philosophy, political ideas, and the economy are structures within that context. And that's why you have things like political economy or political science and all those things being able to allow people to think well before they make decisions. And so the Nigerian situation now is very alarming. It's getting to a point where the government needs to sit down and get the right people. You don't get a faulty car and then you go get a carpenter to repair it for you. You look for the right mechanic with the right experience to fix your car based on his experience and expertise in fixing those cars.
So, are you suggesting that the administration and the cabinet
there's need to restructure the cabinet.
Oh, wow.
The president needs to look in depth and begin to select. There's need to reduce the number of ministerial appointments. There's need to merge some ministries together and look for people who can manage those ministries with expertise and with a bit of modernity in terms of what is happening today. We need to go digital. We need to begin to work in the digital age system. China today is enclosed political system, but with an open economy. They are market driven. They are going everywhere, which is why Trump is now saying, look, we cannot allow China to close down our industries because they want all industries to go to China and China export to America. No, we can determine what we do. And so Nigeria need to look at it. Why are we going to China? Are we going to China to get money for free in order to close down our industrialization system? Or are we looking for money for free in order for us to have some sharing on the table and all the political shenanigans going on in the country? Nigeria need to ask a lot of questions. We need to have a blueprint of our foreign policy. What is the foreign policy of Nigeria to China? What is the foreign policy of Nigeria to America? What is the foreign policy of Nigeria to the UK? There must be different contexts to our foreign policies. And so, Tinubu government, you should realize that allowing NNPC to be fixing the fuel price is the biggest mistake.
Are we going there? We are not going there.
It's the biggest mistake he's doing. And obviously he should understand that the system of the NNPC and the system that is seen in other countries, Unibros, Shell BP, and other big oil companies that has some connection to the state government, they will be able to look at how do they fix the prices. Who fixed that prices? Is it the government? Or is it the company?
I think the technical subcommittee are still negotiating with NNPCL and Dangote Refinery, but that's not an issue for the diaspora. However,
it's an issue because the diaspora, you see, the problem we have also in the diaspora is that we are disconnected. The diaspora need to be really connected. Because when you say you are issuing diaspora bond, you need to find out how many diasporans are actually buying those diaspora bonds. Most of the people that buy those bonds are not even from the diaspora.
We are going to have this discussion again because, you know, these are really important points. And there are leaders within the diaspora community in the UK, like you, who British lawmakers ask these questions. Well, we're the bridge, right?
Yeah.
So it's important that we're kept up to speed. But it's great that you've come back into the Channels Business Global studio. We're looking forward to attending your London Political Summit.
Very much. We appreciate Channels Television
and awards. And we need to keep this discussion going because, again, what happens in Nigeria affects all of us, whether we're in Abuja or we're in Kent. Thank you so much.
I want to say to Mr. President, please, we appreciate the effort of your reform, but your reform must be impactful. in a positive way to Nigerians. You must try to do the right thing with the right people. It's not easy to run a country, but it's easier when you run a country with a vision, and a vision that is practically seen by all, and people can identify with that vision. A lot of Nigerians are now identified with the vision at the moment. He needs to review his vision. He needs to go back to bed, wake up and tell Nigerians, I am sorry, I have a better vision for you now, and I believe this vision is for every one of us, and it's going to be more impactful. But we cannot be buying fuel at 1,300 naira.
I don't think you're buying fuel at that price. I think you probably got on the tube this morning. Mazi Godson Azum, the CEO of Cater and Merger Consult UK.
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure once again. Thank you very much.